October 23, 1944. The first light of dawn breaks over the Philippine Sea, casting silver glimmers on waves that ripple beneath massive warships. The hum of engines and the distant roar of artillery create a tense soundtrack. Aircraft streak overhead, silhouettes against the rising sun, carrying bombs and torpedoes that will decide the fate of the largest naval engagement in history. On the decks, sailors brace against spray and wind, eyes fixed on the horizon. Each ship is a fortress, bristling with guns, radar masts, and searchlights. Smoke drifts from distant skirmishes, mingling with the salt-laden air. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Japanese battleships and carriers are moving into position, their intent clear, to strike at the heart of the American invasion fleet. Tension is palpable. Orders are shouted across decks, the clash of steel and shouted commands punctuating the morning. For those aboard, every glance seaward is a reminder that a single mistake could mean destruction. And yet, amid the chaos, there is determination. The Americans are here to reclaim the Philippines, to turn the tide of the Pacific War, and to challenge the Japanese fleet in a confrontation the world will never forget. As the first waves of aircraft lift off and the distant outlines of enemy ships become visible, Leyte Gulf becomes a stage for strategy, courage, and catastrophe, a place where history will be written in fire, steel, and sacrifice. By late 1944, the Pacific War had reached a critical juncture. The Allies were executing a series of island-hopping campaigns designed to bring them closer to Japan's home islands, reclaim the Philippines, and cut off Japanese supply lines across Southeast Asia. General Douglas MacArthur had long promised to return to the Philippines, and the Leyte landings were the realization of that commitment. The operation was not merely symbolic. It was strategically essential, securing a gateway to the Japanese Empire and isolating their forces in the Pacific. Leyte Gulf, situated off the eastern coast of Leyte Island in the Philippines, became the focal point for this campaign. Its deep waters allowed large fleets to maneuver, while the surrounding islands provided potential staging grounds for both landings and defensive operations. American planners envisioned a coordinated assault. The U.S. 7th Fleet would transport and protect the invasion forces, while the 3rd Fleet, under Admiral William Halsey, would provide cover, striking at any Japanese naval counterattacks. Air superiority was deemed crucial. Carrier-based aircraft would sweep the skies, neutralizing Japanese planes before they could threaten troop landings. The Japanese Imperial Navy, meanwhile, faced the dire reality of attrition. Years of sustained losses had weakened their carrier strength and reduced experienced personnel. Yet their remaining battleships, cruisers, and destroyers were formidable, and Japanese commanders crafted a plan of deception and concentrated strikes to disrupt the American advance. The objective was clear: use the remaining fleet to destroy the invasion force, delay MacArthur's return, and preserve a semblance of naval dominance in the Pacific. Intelligence played a critical role on both sides. Americans had access to intercepted communications and reconnaissance reports, giving them partial insight into Japanese movements. However, the Japanese plan, known as Shogo, involved multiple forces converging from different directions, a classic pincer strategy intended to lure the Americans into a trap. The complexity of these maneuvers, combined with the vastness of the sea, meant that even small errors could have catastrophic consequences. On the ground and at sea, the human element was as vital as strategy. Sailors and pilots prepared for the unknown, aware that Leyte Gulf could become a crucible of fire and steel. Morale, discipline, and coordination would be tested against an enemy determined to inflict maximum damage. Every carrier, battleship, and destroyer represented not just military power, but the lives of thousands of men poised on the brink of history. As the fleets approached their positions, the stage was set for a clash of titanic scale. The following days would see ship against ship, aircraft against aircraft, and sailors facing the full fury of naval warfare, shaping the Pacific Campaign and altering the course of World War II. The Japanese response to the Leyte invasion was carefully calculated, even desperate. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita commanded the center force, a powerful concentration of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers poised to strike the American landing forces in Leyte Gulf. To the north, Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura and Vice Admiral Kyohei Shima led the southern force through Surigao Strait, while a smaller decoy force, under Vice Admiral Chisaburo Ozawa, advanced from the north to lure Admiral Halsey's carriers away. This elaborate plan, Shogo Operation, was designed to exploit the element of surprise, disperse American attention, and deliver a decisive blow to the invasion fleet. The Japanese strategy relied on speed, coordination, and the willingness to sacrifice ships and crews. Battleships like Yamato and Musashi, symbols of naval power, were to engage American forces directly, while cruisers and destroyers executed torpedo attacks in coordinated waves. The decoy force of carriers, though lacking in experienced pilots and aircraft, was intended to draw the bulk of the U.S. Third Fleet away, leaving the landing forces vulnerable. Japanese planners knew that victory hinged on exploiting gaps in American coordination and achieving surprise, an all-or-nothing gamble in the fading days of Japanese naval dominance. On the American side, the U.S. Navy deployed a layered defense to counter any attack. Admiral Halsey commanded the Third Fleet, composed of fast carriers, battleships, and cruisers capable of striking swiftly at Japanese forces. Meanwhile, Admiral Thomas Kinkaid's Seventh Fleet, consisting of slower transports and escort carriers, would support the amphibious landings and provide close protection. U.S. intelligence had intercepted portions of Japanese communications, giving the Allies partial awareness of Japanese movements, though the exact composition and intentions of the enemy forces remained uncertain. The geography of Leyte Gulf added to the stakes. Narrow straits, scattered islands, and shallow reefs created choke points and potential ambush zones. Surigao Strait, for example, became the anticipated site for a night engagement, where destroyers and torpedo boats could strike advancing Japanese ships. Air reconnaissance was crucial, yet the dense archipelago and frequent weather changes complicated visibility and coordination. The Gulf itself would become a stage for simultaneous battles, each feeding into the larger strategy of controlling the Philippine Sea and securing the American landing zones. As the Japanese and American fleets closed in on Leyte, tension reached a breaking point. Sailors on both sides prepared for the unknown, each aware that the coming engagement would test every element of naval warfare: strategy, firepower, technology, and human endurance. Every maneuver, every decision would ripple across the Pacific, shaping the outcome of the campaign and the future of the war. With the stage set, the opening moves of history's largest naval battle were about to unfold. For the men aboard the ships of Leyte Gulf, the battle was immediate, overwhelming, and relentless. Sailors faced deafening gunfire, torpedo alerts, and the constant threat of aircraft dropping bombs from above. Letters and memoirs capture a mixture of fear, determination, and camaraderie. Crew members shared water and rations, patched wounded comrades, and coordinated damage control under fire. Every moment demanded focus and courage, for a single misstep could lead to death in the open sea. Pilots in the air experienced a different kind of intensity. Carrier-based aircraft launched at dawn, diving into flak-filled skies, often outnumbered and outgunned. In the cockpit, every maneuver could mean survival or destruction, and yet the human spirit persisted. Stories recount pilots returning with bullet-riddled planes, navigating damaged engines, and landing safely on moving carriers. Their bravery highlighted the personal cost of strategy, and the sacrifices were measured not just in lives lost, but in moments of sheer courage. Tactical angle. The Leyte Gulf engagement was a masterclass in naval tactics. Japanese planners divided their forces to execute a multi-pronged assault, relying on deception, surprise, and coordinated strikes. Kurita's center force aimed to penetrate the Gulf and destroy the landing ships, while Nishimura and Shima attempted a flanking maneuver through Surigao Strait. Ozawa's decoy force drew the American carriers north, creating openings for the other forces. American commanders, aware of these tactics, deployed layered defenses. Escort carriers provided close air support, destroyers patrolled straits, and battleships formed blocking lines. Night engagements, such as the battle in Surigao Strait, relied on radar and coordination, turning darkness into a tactical advantage. Every movement was calculated, yet the chaos of war demanded real-time adaptations, with small unit decisions having strategic consequences. Technological angle. Technology shaped Leyte Gulf in unprecedented ways. Radar allowed the U.S. fleet to detect enemy ships beyond visual range, providing early warning for air and naval attacks. Aircraft, from dive bombers to torpedo planes, extended the fleet's reach, striking ships before they could close to gun range. Battleships like Yamato and Musashi represented concentrated firepower, while American destroyers carried torpedoes capable of crippling even the largest vessels. Despite these technological advantages, the battle demonstrated limits. Japanese forces adapted by exploiting islands, weather, and nightfall. Even with radar and superior firepower, coordination and human skill determined success. Leyte Gulf was a testament to the interaction of technology and human judgment, each shaping the outcome in ways that neither alone could achieve. Leadership was decisive at Leyte Gulf, shaping both strategy and morale. Admiral William Halsey commanded the Third Fleet with aggressive intent, seeking to bring the Japanese fleet to decisive engagement. His decisions to pursue Ozawa's decoy force northward, while controversial, reflected boldness and a willingness to seize initiative. Admiral Thomas Kinkaid, leading the Seventh Fleet, coordinated the protection of amphibious operations, balancing caution with decisive action in the face of Japanese advances. On the Japanese side, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita's leadership reflected patience, tactical insight, and adherence to doctrine. Despite overwhelming American air and naval superiority, Kurita pushed his center force into Leyte Gulf, demonstrating both audacity and commitment to strategy. Admirals Nishimura and Shima executed night maneuvers through Surigao Strait, while Ozawa's decoy force diverted attention from critical targets. Leadership under fire was tested in every decision, with split-second judgments determining life or death for thousands. Enemy angle. The Japanese Imperial Navy, though weakened by years of war, remained a formidable opponent. Their multi-pronged approach was both strategic and desperate, relying on precision, surprise, and attrition. Sailors and pilots were indoctrinated with a willingness to sacrifice ships and lives to slow the Allied advance. The Japanese fleet adapted to technological disadvantages, employing night attacks, coordinated torpedo strikes, and feints to offset American air superiority. Their resilience and tactical creativity forced the U.S. commanders to respond flexibly, underscoring the skill and determination of the enemy. Moral angle. Leyte Gulf posed profound moral challenges. The battle involved immense destruction, thousands of lives lost, and ships obliterated in mere minutes. American and Japanese sailors alike faced situations where survival and duty clashed. Commanders weighed strategic necessity against human cost, knowing that every order could lead to mass casualties. Historians continue to debate the balance of tactical achievement versus human suffering, but for those in the conflict, moral calculations were inseparable from the immediacy of survival, courage, and the imperatives of war. The interplay of human endurance, technology, leadership, and strategy set the stage for the decisive turning points of Leyte Gulf, where audacity and attrition would determine the outcome of the largest naval battle in history. October 23, 1944. The first clashes erupted in the Sibuyan Sea. American carrier aircraft, launched before dawn, swept toward Vice Admiral Kurita's center force. Bombs rained down on the massive battleship Musashi, each strike reverberating through the steel hull. Smoke and fire erupted from her deck, yet the ship remained a symbol of Japan's naval might, continuing to return fire as she limped toward deeper waters. Pilots navigated flak-filled skies, some never returning to their carriers, their aircraft burning and spiraling into the sea. Simultaneously, the Southern force under Nishimura advanced through Surigao Strait under the cover of darkness. Unaware of the full strength of American defenses, Japanese battleships and destroyers sailed into a trap. U.S. destroyers and PT boats, guided by radar and reconnaissance, launched torpedoes into the oncoming fleet. Explosions lit the night, and gunfire shattered the stillness, as battleships positioned to rake the Japanese ships with broadsides. The engagement became a deadly funnel, where coordination and positioning determined survival. Meanwhile, the decoy force led by Vice Admiral Ozawa drew Halsey's carriers north, stretching American attention and creating uncertainty in command. Carrier-based aircraft engaged in dogfights with Japanese planes, while naval gunnery fired across vast distances. The interplay of deception and aggressive pursuit created a high-stakes chessboard on the open sea, where every move could alter the balance of power. By October 24th, the center force approached Leyte Gulf itself. Kurita's battleships and cruisers prepared to strike the vulnerable transport ships supporting the American landings. Aircraft sorties from escort carriers engaged the approaching fleet, attempting to slow their advance. The men aboard both American and Japanese ships felt the tension of a confrontation whose scale was almost unimaginable. Tens of thousands of sailors, hundreds of ships, all converging in a deadly test of strategy, skill, and endurance. The first day of engagement set the tone. Leyte Gulf would not be decided quickly. The combination of massive firepower, human courage, and tactical ingenuity made the battle unpredictable and deadly. Each maneuver, each strike, carried consequences that would reverberate through the next 48 hours of relentless combat. October 25, 1944. The night had fallen over Surigao Strait, turning the narrow waterway into a deadly trap for the Japanese Southern Force. Vice Admiral Nishimura's battleships and cruisers advanced, unaware of the American ambush. U.S. destroyers and PT boats, lying in wait, launched torpedo attacks with precision. Explosions illuminated the black waters, smoke and fire reflecting against the waves. The lead Japanese battleship, Yamashiro, was struck repeatedly, her armor unable to withstand the concentrated fire. Following the torpedo barrage, U.S. battleships opened fire with broadsides that tore through holes in superstructures. Yamashiro and accompanying cruisers succumbed under the relentless assault, capsizing in the shallow strait. Nishimura and Shima were killed in the engagement, and the remainder of the Southern force was annihilated. Surigao Strait became a textbook example of coordinated night action, radar-guided fire, and the lethal effectiveness of layered naval defense. At the same time, Kurita's center force approached the Leyte Gulf transport area. American escort carriers and destroyers of Taffy III faced an overwhelming Japanese fleet of battleships and cruisers. Despite being heavily outgunned, the escort carriers launched aircraft, and destroyers engaged in aggressive torpedo attacks, weaving between shells and gunfire. Courage and ingenuity became their greatest weapons. Pilots dove on enemy ships, dropping bombs and strafing decks, while destroyers harassed the fleet with torpedoes, creating confusion and forcing Kurita to hesitate. Admiral Kurita, despite the numerical superiority of his force, faced unexpected resistance and feared entrapment. His fleet had suffered damage, and the aggressive defense of Taffy III bought crucial time for the American transports. By late afternoon, Kurita ordered a retreat, pulling his remaining ships from the Gulf and effectively ending the Japanese attempt to disrupt the Leyte landings. The decoy force under Ozawa, having drawn Halsey's carriers north, failed to achieve strategic objectives. While engagements occurred in the Sibuyan Sea and off Cape Engaño, the Americans retained their dominance. The complex Japanese plan, multi-pronged, bold, and desperate, collapsed under the coordination, courage, and technological advantage of the U.S. Navy. By nightfall, Leyte Gulf lay under American control. The largest naval battle in history had reached its decisive turning points, Surigao Strait demonstrated tactical mastery. The heroism of Taffy 3 showcased human courage, and Kurita's withdrawal marked the collapse of Japanese offensive capability. The stage was now set to assess the profound consequences, human and strategic, that would define the aftermath of Leyte Gulf. When the guns fell silent over Leyte Gulf, the scale of destruction was staggering. The Japanese Imperial Navy had lost 4 battleships, 3 heavy cruisers, 4 light cruisers, and over 30 destroyers. Aircraft losses were similarly catastrophic, with hundreds of planes destroyed, crippling Japan's naval air capability for the remainder of the war. On the American side, the cost was significant but comparatively lighter. Dozens of ships damaged or sunk, over 3,000 sailors and airmen killed, and many more wounded. The sinking of Yamato and Musashi became emblematic of the battle's ferocity. These super battleships, symbols of Japan's naval might, had been rendered impotent by concentrated air and naval fire. Across the Gulf, smaller vessels bore scars of relentless combat. Destroyers riddled with shell holes, escort carriers smoldering from kamikaze and bomb strikes, and landing craft damaged or destroyed while unloading troops. The physical devastation mirrored the human toll, as sailors fought to survive amid smoke, fire, and flooding compartments. Strategically, Leyte Gulf secured the invasion of the Philippines. MacArthur's forces were able to establish and expand beachheads, while Japanese attempts to disrupt the landings were decisively thwarted. The battle marked a turning point in the Pacific War. Japan's naval offensive capability was effectively shattered, ensuring that future American operations would face diminished naval resistance. The combination of overwhelming American coordination, air power, and technological superiority had turned the tide in the Pacific. Yet the aftermath extended beyond numbers and strategy. Sailors, pilots, and Marines carried the psychological weight of combat. Memories of ships sinking, comrades lost, and the constant presence of death at sea. Letters home recounted moments of courage and fear, while survivors grappled with the shock of witnessing destruction on an unprecedented scale. The immediate tactical success was inseparable from the human cost, a reminder that every victory in war is built upon sacrifice. The psychological and strategic impact of Leyte Gulf reverberated long after the guns fell silent. For the Japanese Navy, the battle marked the effective end of its ability to conduct large-scale offensive operations. Remaining battleships and cruisers were forced into defensive roles, and the loss of experienced pilots and crew weakened the Imperial Navy beyond recovery. Morale plummeted, and the illusion of Japan's ability to contest Allied advances in the Philippines and the broader Pacific was shattered. For the Americans, the victory came at both relief and cost. Sailors and aviators carried the memories of intense combat, the roar of explosions, and the sight of fellow sailors lost at sea. Many recounted the sheer chaos of multi-directional attacks, torpedo strikes, and kamikaze threats, describing days that felt endless and nights filled with tension. Yet alongside the trauma was pride and recognition of collective accomplishment. Disciplined coordination, innovative tactics, and courage under fire had preserved the invasion fleet and ensured the success of the Leyte landings. The lessons learned were immediately incorporated into subsequent operations. Leyte Gulf demonstrated the necessity of integrating air and naval power, the effectiveness of radar-guided gunnery, and the importance of layered defense in amphibious operations. Night engagements, previously fraught with uncertainty, now highlighted the potential of well-coordinated ambushes using radar and destroyer tactics. For commanders, the battle reinforced the critical value of initiative, adaptability, and leadership under fire, as even small decisions could shift the momentum in a vast, chaotic battlefield. Historians later emphasized that Leyte Gulf was more than a tactical victory. It symbolized the culmination of American naval dominance in the Pacific. The destruction of Japanese surface fleets removed the final major threat to Allied shipping and amphibious operations, paving the way for the liberation of the Philippines and subsequent assaults closer to Japan. The human stories of bravery and endurance, however, remained equally significant. Sailors and pilots had faced the largest naval battle in history and emerged victorious, carrying lessons and scars alike. As the waters of Leyte Gulf settled into calm, the strategic and human consequences of the battle became clear. Ships lay shattered, fleets diminished, and thousands of lives had been altered forever. Yet amid the devastation, the foundations for Allied victory in the Pacific had been firmly established, setting the stage for reflection on the enormity of what had transpired. Leyte Gulf stands as a monumental testament to the scale, complexity, and human cost of modern naval warfare. In a span of 3 days, tens of thousands of sailors, pilots, and Marines faced fire, steel, and the unpredictable chaos of the sea. The battle tested strategy, technology, and endurance to their limits, and its outcome reshaped the Pacific War forever. For the men who fought, Leyte Gulf was both a crucible and a defining moment. Sailors endured relentless gunfire, pilots braved anti-aircraft fire and torpedo strikes, and small crews made life-or-death decisions with consequences that echoed across the battlefield. Their courage, discipline, and ingenuity under extreme conditions highlight the human dimension behind strategic victories, where individual actions can tip the balance in conflicts of unprecedented scale. Strategically, the battle cemented American naval supremacy in the Pacific. Japan's remaining surface fleet was shattered, the Philippines were secured, and the pathway toward the Japanese home islands opened. Technological advancements, radar, carrier aviation, and coordinated fleet maneuvers proved decisive, but it was the combination of human courage and leadership that truly defined the outcome. As the waters of Leyte Gulf now lie calm, the echoes of cannon fire and the courage of those who fought remain etched in history. The battle reminds us that warfare is not merely a contest of ships and planes, but human endeavor shaped by endurance, sacrifice, and resolve. Leyte Gulf endures as a symbol of strategic mastery, technological innovation, and the profound resilience of the men who stood at the center of S largest naval confrontation.